Anyway, so I was organizing events, getting other people to host it, and it was only when COVID arrived and we couldn't do live events that we started to tinker with this thing called online events and YouTube and so on. And by then, we had got a few people to speak to us, and a few people were following it, and it was starting to grow in popularity. And the real breakthrough came towards the end of 2022 when we started to take it quite seriously, improved the production, got a bit of better equipment. And, there's a bit of a snowball effect, is that you start speaking to one person who speaks to another person, and you start to get hold of the real people that you want to feature on your show. So that's a quick story as to how we got to the State of the Nation. But certainly, in the last year, we have spoken to, barring the senior leadership of the ANC and senior leadership of the EFF, we've spoken to every party. We kind of know what's going on, even though we'll get to the confusion in a minute. And I can really keep you up to date and give you a couple of predictions. So let's have a look at where we are. I want to start with this graph over here. Now, there's not going to be a lot of graphs and presentations, but really what we're seeing is the problem in South Africa that is facing the ruling party as well as the South African electorate. If you look at that sort of pyramid shape that we've managed to get in South Africa, is that inflection point. Basically, what happens is from the moment Jacob Zuma comes into power, South Africa starts looking like a ski slope, right? Everything just goes in the wrong direction. That's the money, that's the credit rating, that's what the world thinks of us. That's unemployment, that's crime, that's everything starts heading in one almost uninterrupted direction. You can see, if you look on the right-hand side around 2020, a brief blip when Cyril Ramaphosa took over as president, but pretty soon he takes it to new depths. So now we're starting to get a picture, not that I have to sell this to the audience here because obviously people are very savvy. That is sadly the thing that faces the country, a country in steep decline and been in decline for 15 years. Right? So first 15 years, sort of in the right direction, not spectacular, but fine. Next 15 years, horrendous. And here we are, heading towards a general election. So before we go and look at the parties, I just want to sketch a little background about South African voters. There's a couple of things that people will say that I don't think are necessarily true. I think the majority of South Africans are extremely politically aware. There is a typical sort of suburban view of, people will just give their vote to the ruling party because, they don't really, fill in on the dotted line. No. Those people that live in those areas that vote primarily for the ANC are very politically aware. They live a lot closer to politics than what we do. We live very far away from politics. We drive generally, if there's a pothole, we moan for a week and somebody may come and fix it. But we have a road. Water generally runs. When the lights go out, we can sort of make an alternate plan for power. We've got our own security companies, health, etc. The point is that we live a little distance away from direct politics. In rural areas, township areas, etc., those communities live on top of politics. If the water doesn't run, there's no JoJo tank they can go and buy because they've got nowhere to put it. They've got no money to buy the JoJo tank, etc. So when they are let down by government, they are let down properly. It's important to know, for us to understand that people understand that. It's not just dumb people doing dumb things. These are people that are voting knowing what effect the politicians have on their life. And over the last couple of years, it's become more apparent. I'm sure even within your own circle of people that we've become more aware of local government. We've become more aware of government's failings than ever before. In those good years, the first 15 years, did we even really know how local government worked or provincial government worked? Not really, because we didn't have to, because it was still sort of working, so there was a distance. The failing of the ANC has been the fact that they've opened the curtain. You know, it's the magician's curtain. They've opened it, and people can see behind. You know, it's that old thing, you don't really want to see how sausages are made. So they've opened that curtain, and everybody can now see the implication of cadre deployment or bad ministers, etc., etc. So please understand that. But what do people have? Well, we'll just look at the ANC, right? They've got a big traditional support base, a very big traditional support base that is there for a valid reason. This was the party that managed to be the iconic liberators, if you want to call it that, even though the people in this room would know that the liberation came as a whole host of actions by a whole host of players, probably international sports boycotts, economic sanctions, etc., etc. But the ANC gets that wonderful badge of being the liberation movement that finally gave South Africans freedom, and it happened. They've got it. And what happens? In those first 15 years, they do go out and put water where there wasn't water before. Is it efficient? No. But it was there. Right? When we see pictures of our president opening a tap, and we all think it's laughable, which is the right response, to that community there was no tap. To that community it is life-changing. Right? The same thing goes for electricity. I know that recently one of the brilliant politicians said, you know, it's not the end of the world. Load shedding is not the end of the world. The context being that if you've had no power before, when the power's off for a couple of hours, it's not the end of the world. But what they're hoping is that people will see it that way, but people don't see it that way. We don't see it that way, and so we shouldn't. That community shouldn't be happy with one tap. They should expect a tap in every house. They shouldn't expect stage 2 load shedding. They should have no load shedding at all. Right? That's the obvious expectation. So they are fighting this traditional loyalty with the fact that the electorate knows the bad job they're doing. They're struggling to keep the party together, the ANC. Now, I know we're talking about the election date. You know, the interesting story on that is that certainly my sources tell me it's May the 22nd. But the ANC won't announce that date because the ANC hate to be told to do anything. They'd really hate it. I once did an event with Gwedi Mantashe when he was still Secretary General of the ANC, and there was one minister everybody was expecting for him to fire, and he said, the question was asked, when are you going to fire ex-minister, whoever it was? There were a whole host of them. And he said, look, haven't you got it yet? When you tell us to do something, we won't do it. That kind of mindset is all pervasive in the ANC. So understand that even a little stupid thing like announcing the election date, we all know it's going to be at the end of May. Does it matter whether it's 22nd or 29th? Just announce the bloody date. Let's get on with it. They won't do it because they don't want to be told to do it. And that sort of belligerence, hard-headed, is what has got them into trouble. Within the party, they're struggling to keep their party together. I was quite surprised with the May date at all, because I would have thought they'd push it to the edge, give themselves a bit more time. You know, maybe take it 2 months further, because they could have. But they are in such a death spiral, the party. The ANC is in such a death spiral that they don't know whether they'll make it to May as one entity. So we're going to go into that in a little more detail when we get to the actual looking at potential outcomes for the election. Within the ANC, they have lost their own children. Their own children won't vote for their party. And that's a terrible thing. I think we saw a taste of that in the old South Africa when the National Party started to lose their own children, right? There was Pa sitting in Parliament with his pork pie hat, and the son had long hair. Wasn't going to vote for the National Party, right? That's a very bad time for any political party, and it's happened to the ANC now, right? So it's very, very important. And then just understand that right now the ANC could build a glittering highway under budget and on time, and we'd still say, yeah, but what about that road with potholes and this road that you haven't built? The point I'm getting to, they have been so bad over the last 15 years that even their good deeds won't be acknowledged. And when you get to that point, it's a bit like a relationship breaking down. When you get to that point where even somebody does something nice to you, you buy flowers and say, you must be having an affair, that kind of mindset, right? The ANC has earned that problem that they have. So my outlook, everyone that I hear, there is no magic bullet. They thought perhaps taking Israel to the ICJ on the case of genocide would help them. It's given them a tiny bump in the Muslim community, which is not statistically significant. There are no other tricks they could come out with. Right? The one trick that they could possibly do is that somehow you remedy the power situation tomorrow. Say, okay, that's it, load shedding's finished. Well, that could help electorally, but they couldn't even do that. So are they going to improve from here? It's very hard to see how they will. What are the predictions? The predictions range, from the most optimistic being people saying, oh, they'll get 50%, to the most pessimistic saying 30%. And I think the answer is lying somewhere in the middle. Because in the last election, and we're going to get to that in a minute, don't let me do that. So that's the ANC, really, really in a bad position and struggling to improve from there. Let's talk about our friends in the Democratic Alliance. At the moment, this is the only party that won't speak to me, right? Just so that we know. And I've probably had more DA people on my platform than anything else. Terribly, unbelievably, and undeniably tone deaf is the best way to put it, right? It is so frustrating that you cannot understand how frustrating it is to deal with them. Are they good at running things? No doubt. They are. You want your ward councillor to come from the DA. You want the DA in Parliament. You would even want a DA government. But you also want to clap them sometime and say, come on, understand that what are they seeing? So let's sort of unpack that. What are they seeing? They have put their entire campaign on one thing, saying that people will respond, people will see how well Cape Town is run, and then in Bethlehem they'll vote for the DA because they know that Cape Town's run well. Well, if only it were so. It's not even that in the first world. It doesn't happen, right? Politics is probably 50% common sense and 50%, loyalty, emotional, whatever it is. And people, the majority of South Africans do not see themselves in the DA. And the DA obviously has had a tremendous outflow of black members, senior black members. Some of those members weren't that great. That's fine. But some of them were quite good. And regardless of whether they're good, bad, indifferent, it's just a very bad look. It's a bit, to go back to that point I made about the ANC, when your children won't vote for your party, you've got a problem. How are you going to deal with that? Well, you can say, well, they're just being stupid. Well, that's one way of dealing with it. Another way of saying, what is it that we're doing? Right? So, John Steenhuisen got very angry with me because I referred to him as Boss John in an interview because I'm very angry with the DA. I think what they did was they analyzed the 2019 election very poorly. In 2019, they lost 2%. They panicked like hell because they lost some votes to the Freedom Front Plus. They were looking for someone to blame because it was the first time they took a backward step. So what did they do? They blamed Musi Maimane. They did a hatchet job on a report, blame Musi Maimane for their problems, right? Whether it was, look, this isn't about Musi, but the point is that at that point you had a resurgent ANC under Ramaphosa. We were all so excited that it wasn't Jacob Zuma. So sure, you're going to lose some votes to Ramaphoria, as they called it at the time. But to put it all, at the door of Maimane is, I thought was ridiculous and bad analysis. And it leads me to the conclusion that the big fear that I've got is that they do not have national ambition at all. They are happy to be a regional party, Western Cape, you're 1,000 miles from everybody, you've got a sea on all sides, you've got a desert behind you, it's wonderful. Just leave us alone, cut us off, stop one level short of Cape independence and just leave us alone, and we're happy with that. What's happened to them up here, where we've had to go through hell, is it shows that they just haven't really had the stomach for the fight. When Herman Mashaba was fighting the fight, they turned back from the fight. When Mpho Phalatse was mayor of Johannesburg, they turned back instead of taking on the fight. I don't think that they have the stomach for the fight in the north of South Africa. And, I think that their good governance could keep them roughly in that 20% range, but that's going to be the extent of it. And in the meantime, it was their race to lose, and they're losing it. It's very sad, because I'm sure many people over here, myself included, very sympathetic, probably ex-DA voters or current DA voters. And you know what? You would probably still vote for them because they probably make the best government. But are they going to be the ruling party? No. Do they have ambitions to be the ruling party? Not that I've seen. So that's where I see the DA at the moment. These guys. Now these guys, the EFF. Now, I am not a fan of the EFF for a simple reason, that I don't buy what they're selling. I see it as being unbelievably old-fashioned. Right? That whole thing of we're all going to wear uniforms and give each other military-sounding names, I thought that ended in the 70s. But here they're trying to recycle this in the 2000s, and I don't see it landing. I don't see South Africa as ever having been an overly revolutionary country. Consider for a moment South Africa and our road to democracy versus Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. That was a violent struggle. Those people were proper revolutionaries. They were prepared to go and shoot and die and all sorts of things. In South Africa, there was never really that kind of climate. You didn't have uhuru like they had in Kenya. It's not really seemingly in the way that South Africans are. Quite a peace-loving lot. Kind of want to get on with our lives. Oh, you're going to find a few people. Yeah, they're in the stadium there with Julius Malema, right? Obviously, his politics are just downright dangerous, unworkable. There's no doubt about it. But the real question is, what does the future hold for them? Well, there's a trend that has emerged, and you can go back and check. Every single election, the polls will underestimate the vote that the DA will get and overestimate the vote that the EFF will get. And I have made this point, and I'll show it to you before. The EFF, in actual fact, I don't see what they would have done to have built support. Right? And therefore, why should they get more support than they got the last time? And they've got other troubles on the horizon, being that other people, much like the DA, if you're not going to do the job, other people are going to come and do it for you. The cult of personality is absolute, and that sits quite uncomfortably. Once again, South Africa is not really the cult of personality place. It's a big country. It's not a small country where one person can rise up and become the ultimate leader. It sits uncomfortably with South Africans to have this commander-in-chief, as he calls himself, Julius Malema. You do it my way or I'll fire you. Right? This is smacks of Donald Trump. It's just not, it doesn't land in South Africa, and you can see it by the poll numbers. If anybody watches by-elections as closely as somebody like I do, you will see that the EFF are absolutely nowhere to be found in urban areas, nowhere to be found in KZN. They do have some support in Mpumalanga, a little bit of support in Limpopo, and some support in the Northwest. That's it. They can't make an impression in the Western Cape. Gauteng, they haven't really built on it. So I'm not overly concerned about the EFF, right? Will they become the official opposition? It would take a wipeout of the DA, which I don't think is going to happen now. But I don't think they'll be the official opposition. And what difference does it make who the official opposition is? The DA has been the official opposition since 1999, and it doesn't really matter. This isn't Britain. This isn't a two-party system where the leader of the opposition has some kind of power, or in America where you've got the House and the Senate. So the leader of the opposition, let's not be frightened by that. So if you do have a situation where the EFF goes up by a couple of percent and the DA goes down by a couple of percent and they become the official opposition, big deal. It hasn't helped the DA. I'm saying let's be practical about it, right? So the EFF, I remain skeptical of their growth. I don't think it's real. So where's their growth going to go? Where's growth? Where are the votes going to go to in South Africa? Let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of the new participants, because the one thing we know is that we've got a lot of parties, a lot of new parties, a lot of old parties that still get votes, that still have appeal. So we're not, I think there's something like 200 parties that are going to be at the general election. A lot of them are going to just lose a lot of money, but let's talk about the ones that catch the headlines. So I'm going to go a little bit, let's look at, I want to look at the Freedom Front Plus and the IFP first. Let's talk about the Freedom Front Plus. Freedom Front Plus is kind of like, the common sense party. They tout themselves up. It's hard to talk to them without feeling that they've got a handle on politics. It's a throwback to the old dapper Afrikaner gentleman. They've got some support. But they don't, once again, it's easy to point out, and I've gave you my view on the DA not wanting to without ambition. Well, the Freedom Front Plus is hardly showing any ambition, They still have old white Afrikaner men running their party. That's also got limited appeal. But all they have been has been a very good party to the DA. In actual fact, it's just a sub-branch of the DA, if one looks at it that way. 2-3%, they're quite good in Parliament with their limited mileage. They're not really going to grow too much. If I was the DA, I wouldn't be losing too much sleep over them. Then I'll talk about the IFP. Now, the IFP had a really, really wonderful opportunity. Now, I think that the biggest problem with the IFP was Buthelezi. I think Buthelezi was a different version of Julius Malema, but same kind of guy. He wasn't going to go until God took him away. He wanted to stay there, ruler for life, that kind of thing. He wasn't a modernist. He's a traditionalist. You wonder he worried more about the kings and that. There was an opportunity when Buthelezi passed, that big shadow being taken off the IFP. What are they going to do? And I've interviewed Tlabisa, the new leader, Valancourt Tlabisa. He's actually not that new. He's been the leader for about 5 years, but many of those years were in the shadow of Buthelezi. And they make all the right noises. They are a solid, old-fashioned political party, but very much looking purely at the Zulu market, if I could put it that way, segment. That's where they appeal. They haven't yet, I think if one has to be critical of Buthelezi, you would say in the early 90s, he really had the chance to take the IFP and make it a national party. at that point, they seemed like a genuine alternative. Instead, he turned the corner and went straight back into KZN and made it a Zulu nationalist party. They're trying to break out of that, but it's quite a hard thing to break out of. So their big opportunity came in two ways. One was the spectre of Buthelezi gone. They could now build on that. And to Tlebisa's credit, he has tried. Has it worked? Not overly, not yet. They need to be seen to be a lot more young and energetic than what they are. But their bigger opportunity came with the failings of the ANC in KZN. KZN is very, very tired of the ANC, but you've got a province that's primarily Zulu. They do like that Zulu nationalist stuff, and IFP was poised to do exceedingly well and will do well. And some of the by-elections have shown they'll do well. But then along comes Mkhonto Wesizwe. From the grave comes Jacob Zuma to terrorize us some more, right? And pull out the really traditional Zulu vote. There's only one question that nobody seems to be able to get an answer to or even ask of the MK. What do they stand for? What is it that they want to achieve? Well, we know that Zuma hates Cyril. And then, in the next week or two, I'll be speaking to their spokesman on the show. He was meant to come last week and then had to go down to a by-election. But does anybody in the room know what it is they want to do? We've heard all sorts of things that are crazy. We've heard Zuma say they're going to get a 2/3 majority. They can't get 24. They've stood in two by-elections, and everybody's very excited because they got like 24% in both. But if you analyze those results, it was 200 in one election and 300 in another election. They got 500 votes. So it's not like they're suddenly the next big thing. But the days of just standing as a party on personality are coming to an end, and I'm going to say they are at an end. To just trade on a name is coming to an end or is at an end, right? And here we're going to talk about ding, 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 Rise Mzansi, Action SA, Build One South Africa, and I'm kind of speaking to them together, even though there's a little bit of differences between them. Action SA, led by Herman Mashaba, did really well in their first outing where they stood in 6 municipalities up here in Gauteng and did really, really well. Herman Mashaba, very aggrieved, very angry guy, good guy, clever guy, all these things, canny, not a politician. Driven by two things. He really does want to make South Africa a better place. There's no doubt about it. And given his business background, he understands what would make South Africa a better place. But it can't cancel out the other thing that's driving him, and that's he's one of these guys who's clearly used to winning, in a nice sense, right? He's a winner. He's made his story is unbelievable. To actually, create a multi-million rand business in apartheid South Africa as a black South African is a hell of a story. So it's just a measure of the guy. He's prepared to take on the fight. This guy is not scared. But often when you find those guys that really like to succeed, they don't like to lose. And to me, he's still treating his DA treatment as a loss. And he's not going to rest until he avenges that. And sometimes it feels like Action SA is blinded by a hatred of the DA because you've got these guys who all left the DA for one reason or another. And you sometimes wonder if they want to make, if you're going to their head office, if it says make South Africa a better place or get even with the DA. Now, as a tactic, it doesn't work. We don't care about your problem that you had there. We want the country to be a better place. Do we really care about your problems? Really, do you care about my problems? Not really. A little bit. So, oh, shame. That's nice. Now let's vote. Different factors come into mind. And you feel sometimes that if they would just change the focus, they'd be much better for it. But I'm going to say they have created a hell of a structure. And I've got to say, as a normal person who, with a good understanding of politics, now getting into this, I have really got to understand the value of political structure in a country like South Africa. I know it's hard for us to understand because we are independently minded. We would feel absolutely, not out of place if we were to be involved in politics in any country, first world country. For the rest of the country, you need branches. You need people that are out there. Your councillor needs to be seen. In our case, we just need to know the website or the number of the councillor. That's enough for us. In other areas of the country, you need that office, that branch office where you can go with your complaint. You need those feet on the ground. And Action SA has done that unbelievably well. They have built a proper structure throughout the country. But nobody knows how to analyze their results. It's just impossible. We're going to get onto that in a second because Rise Mzansi and Build One South Africa, now there's something very interesting happening there. And just yesterday I was speaking to, I don't know if you saw, there was a clip that went viral of this young lady from Build One South Africa just after the President's State of the Nation speech, who was very critical of the State of the Nation speech. And her name's Ayanda Ali, and she's now part of Build One South Africa. And she used to work within the ANC. She was Fikile Mbalula's spokesperson. But my word, the talent in South African politics resides in these three new parties. Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa, Action SA, where you look at this and you say, these are the young people that should have by now taken over the ANC, but they haven't been given a chance because the old people are still there. Right? You've got your 70-year-old cabinet, 70-plus-year-old cabinet. They don't want to go anywhere because they need the money. And Jacob Zuma killed the ambitions of all young politicians by calling them clever blacks. And as this woman said on the show yesterday, she said it's deeply hurtful. What do you want in your party? Dumb blacks. When you're moaning about clever blacks. So the point is that those clever blacks are in those parties. Right? The sly, devious, crooked ones are in MK and EFF, right? The ones that want to wear animal skins are in IFP. But the people that can make South Africa grow at 5% per annum, which is what we need if we're going to solve unemployment and many of our other problems, are sitting in Action SA, Rise Mzansi, Build One South Africa, and to a small degree in the Democratic Alliance, right? There is no discernible talent that I can see within the ANC. So that's why I'm going to get on to the next part where we start looking at some numbers and making some predictions. I want you to have a look at this before people say, people in South Africa just vote out of loyalty. Look at that ANC vote over there, 69.7% in 2004, and every election they've ratcheted down. That 57.5% was as Ramaphosa as their candidate. So people are voting with not just voting out of loyalty. That is quite a steep decline, 12%, right? And you look at the other parties, the DA has continued to climb. They had a setback in 2019, as we said. To me, they should have just treated that for what it was, which was, and built on that era. 2014, there was a bit of protest against Zuma at that point. So, the DA is steady over there. And then, if you look at the EFF, that's hardly the most explosive growth. But what I want to add into this is this. This is the 21 local government elections. And this is showing you an interesting story. This is if you tabulate all the results of the local government's election votes per party. And if you do the assumption that very few people, probably yourselves included, certainly myself included, very few of us vote for one party in the national elections and a different party in the local government elections. I'm yet to meet that beast. A lot of people say, oh, I may give my vote to somebody else. I'm like, oh, really? Why would you do that? Generally, especially in a place like South Africa, where there's a disparity between the parties, right? So if you have to look at that, look at the ANC, 45.6% versus 57.5%. That's both times with Cyril Ramaphosa. Now ask yourself, have they done anything to increase that vote since 2021? We've had far worse load shedding. We've got all kinds of problems. Unemployment has gone up. And I'm trying to look at this and say to the people that say, no, they might get 50%, and say, what have they done since then to increase that vote? So if a little bit of logic would say, at very best, if they roll out this magnificent election machinery, they may be able to keep that number, at best. They are going to be below 50%. And if we allow ourselves just to dream a little bit, they're probably going well below 40%. Let's look at the DA, 21.7% versus 20.8%. 22% there in 2014. What it's telling you is that the DA has got their constituency, it's loyal, they're not going anywhere, they're probably not going to lose the 20%. I live down the road here. Do we live in a place that's run particularly poorly? No, under the circumstances, run as well as possible. Do they do the work that we want in Parliament? Yes, they're the only ones holding the government to account. Why should they lose votes? And that's how voters think. I don't see them losing I saw some polls putting them down at 14%. I don't see that happening. Action SA were around in the local government election, so I'm trying to see where they would lose the vote. So the one that I really find interesting is if you look at the EFF, 7.4%, 6.4%, 10.8% in the last three general elections. Now, I believe that the EFF does South Africa it fulfills a very important role in South Africa. It's that valve on your pressure cooker. If you didn't have it, the kitchen would explode. It's good that you take really angry people and put them in one place and they can be angry together, right? Let them be there. We need them. Otherwise, what would they do? Well, I can tell you what they would do. Where were those people before 2009? They were all in the ANC. And what did that mad minority do? They managed to give us Jacob Zuma. So rather that they are in their own little area, cauterized from the adults, let them play toy soldiers, let them wear their uniforms and call each other commander and fighter, and you go for it. Do whatever you like. Pantomime the hell out of it. That's good, do it. But keep them out of power, right? So, and then this thing that I always say that I only ever had to stop a recording once and edit something out because I was challenged. There's a guy's fantastic election watcher called Wayne Sussman. And I really do like Wayne, and we were talking about the elections. This was last year sometime, and Wayne, I think on the ground you see that energy of the EFF, you see the noise, you see the uniforms. It feels like this tide is here. It seems to invade everyone that does it. And he said, he's always on about how they're growing and growing. It never shows in the votes, but how they're growing, they're growing. So I said, but Wayne, why do you say they're growing when they lost votes in the last election? And he said to me, whoa, he says, cut. There's poor old Matthew sitting there, stop everything. He said, you're wrong. They didn't go down. So, we're in the middle of the recording, fine, we'll stop. I'll re-ask the question, frame it differently, which we do. And we go out, and of course we go and check. 10.8% in 2019, 10.3% in 2021. I was right. They've lost votes. And if this red tide is coming, where is it? Right? So those three parties, I see a further fall for the ANC. I think the DA around 20%. If they fall, it's not by much. The EFF, I see them around that 10 to 12% at the most. Now, the EFF have got another problem. Their potential growth was to pick up those Zuma votes down in KZN, right? That was their growth area. And then they committed one terrible mistake. They got to govern in coalition with IFP in some of the more rural KZN wards, which gave them a bit of power, and then they overplayed their hand. They kicked out the IFP. And that was a very, very bad idea, because once again the Zulu nationalism came out, and since then the EFF have just been on a hiding to nothing KZN, and then this has been compounded by the emergence of the MK party. So where are they going to grow? Well, I can tell you that the parties like Action SA, Build One South Africa, Rise Mzansi, Ask Matthew, Watch the Show, these people are very active in Limpopo. And they're very active in Mpumalanga. And those are EFF strongholds. Or strongholds are the wrong word. They are the areas where the EFF has got votes. So if other people are attacking you in your area, I can't see them growing. So I am quite bearish on their outcome. And the numbers always back me up, because every one of those elections people have expected them to get higher. And every time they underperform, everybody has got excuses. Oh, next time they're going to do really well. So sleep a little bit easier tonight until we start talking about what's coming. Let's talk, and I'm going to do my favorite thing. We are into coalitions, and I was going to say that in our lives, but maybe even in our children's lives, we will never see a majority party in South Africa again. And I think that's a terribly good thing. I think it's a wonderfully good thing. I am not a fan of outright majorities, right? Because you rely on the good nature of the majority party. And sometimes majority parties don't act in good nature. And I'll give you a good example of that, and that is in Britain. We probably all keep an eye out on the British political scene. Roughly two parties. You've got Labour and the Conservatives. And then you'll have Conservatives generally will keep power for about 3 terms, and then Labour will generally be around for 2 terms, and so they'll swap. But what is really interesting to me is, in a more advanced environment like that, what happens to the ruling party that eventually they get voted out? Because this is happening right now as we speak. The Conservative Party have been really strong, and then the madness of power seems to suddenly get into everybody's heads, and they really do crazy stuff, right? It's just what happens with big majority parties. And the Conservative Party had got to this majority, and then what are they going to do? Brexit, Boris Johnson, Theresa May, all these people. You always say to yourself, this is the sign of madness that comes from the arrogance of power. And so I am very excited about coalitions. We have had a very bad time in Johannesburg because of coalitions, but in South Africa, please understand that there are about 40 coalitions, and about 35 of them work without issue. They're usually in smaller areas and coalitions with parties that can work together, with communities that are not like our communities. These are communities that are smaller, tighter, and they know when you're doing a lousy job, and they know when you've taken out the guy who was doing a good job and now you're doing a worse job. You get instant feedback. Those coalitions are working quite well. So I am quite positive about coalitions. Please understand, very positive about coalitions. And obviously, we can look at countries throughout Europe, generally are coalition countries, right? Germany being the poster child for coalitions, the Netherlands, etc. So let's talk about what's going to happen in a coalition, or let's just understand one thing, because now I'm going to sort of contradict myself a little bit here. If you look at the politics of, say, a country like the Netherlands is a good example, Germany similar. They've had green parties, right, for 50 years, and the Green Party, it seems to me stuck. It's almost like they always seem to get 10%. And that's all they ever want, but they are available for coalitions. And what do they want to do? Do they want to become the majority party? No. They want to stay the Green Party with their 10%, and they can horse trade their coalitions, and they can do whatever they like, and they're happy with their 10%. So in South Africa, our version of that would be DA being happy with 20% and wielding that in their coalition discussions. IFP being happy with their 10%, whatever they get if they grow from, And you start building up these voting blocks that can almost work together in coalitions. We were quite involved in the multi-party charter. The multi-party charter, just to understand, in the last election, if we go back to 2019, we put all their votes together, they had about 33% of the vote, most of that being the DA's 20%. Well, we don't know what other parties that will eventually, Rise and Zanzi, Build One South Africa, they're not in the coalition, but they will be. What happens if they get, 10% each? I'm just saying. You could end up with a majority in that multi-party charter. It's not beyond the realms of possibility. Highly unlikely. I don't think it's going to happen. But I'm just saying that in the new world of coalitions, expect fun stuff to happen. So let's look at a couple of potential likelihoods. At this point, you call it, play it again. And that is that maybe these guys are right, and I can't see where, but somehow the ANC gets 50% plus one. Not likely, but let's just say they get what they got at the last election, 47% They go and they find some of these political entrepreneurs, people like Patricia de Lille. She's only in it for the money. Bantu Alamisa, he's only in it for the money. There's a few other, ATM party. They're in it, they get a cabinet post, they make money for themselves, they give you their 1%, and you don't even know it's a coalition, but it's a coalition. And what will happen is those parties, as we've seen with, Patricia de Lille is always a good example. She's been the biggest lapdog of the ANC. Right? So if you're voting for good party, you're not just voting for the ANC, you're voting for the super ANC because she'll lick boots more than anybody. So, that's what will happen if they do get close to that 50% mark. And that's what they are hoping for. This is the ANC's best outcome. I don't think the 50% plus one is envisioned, but they're hoping that they can form a coalition with a few malleable little parties that will come to them, give them their votes, and just do whatever they say. The perfect example of that is the Patriotic Alliance, who I haven't spoken about. They are a party basically for poor colored communities, right? The doomsday scenario, that's the doomsday scenario. The ANC gets in the low 40s, they need a bigger partner, they have to go and do a deal with the devil. Now, just interestingly, this could unfortunately be a reality because Paul Mashatile wants us to happen. He's our deputy president, he wants to kick out Cyril, he becomes president, he governs the country in coalition with the EFF. He's basically probably got an overall ready in his cupboard, right? That is almost a bit of a palace revolution. The way it would work is the ANC, let's just say, gets 40% at the election. Suddenly, within the ANC, they recall their president. They love doing that. And the deputy takes over and then announces the coalition. That, sadly, is a very reasonable possibility. What would happen? Well, what would happen is all investment in South Africa would just disappear overnight, right? South Africans, whatever young talent we got, would immigrate immediately, right? It would be a disaster. It would be 5 years of hell, and all three parties would disappear after that. They would never get another vote after that because they would do absolutely nothing constructive for the country. They will not build anything. They will rush through bills like NHI. They'll rush through things like property expropriation. None of that which will work, even if they did it. It would be a version of the first 5 years of Zuma, but a little without the money. There'll be nothing left to steal. That's the only good part. But it could happen. But my biggest likelihood is that one, which surprises people. And that is a coalition between the ANC and the Democratic Alliance. Right, now, let me explain to you why this might happen. is that there's a problem with coalitions. The problem with coalitions is that if you and I go into coalition, but we've got the same voters, we're after the same voting pool, I'm going to try and make you look bad every day because I want your voters to vote for me. And you're going to do the same to me. And they end up being quite fractious. But in this case, if it gets sold as almost a government of national unity, South Africa's in trouble. We put together the old sort of thing of the people and business in the same room. It also gives Cyril and some people, I don't like Cyril, I don't think he's an honest broker, but it gives somebody who may be patriotic an opportunity, an easy sell to say, listen guys, do you know how bad things are? This gives us a way to solve it. We put together everything, one South Africa, we worry about it at the next 5 years, let's do it. They give the DA the sort of Ministry of Finance, etc., because there's certain things within the ANC that they would love to do. Let's say some of them would love to do that they can't do. They would love to send people to jail, but they can't. Because it's the ANC is a cross between the Catholic Church and a football team, right? It is. It's exactly like that. You kind of go, especially historically, it's changing a bit. Where it's just becoming a straight-out criminal organization, but its roots were you would go off into exile or into the camp, so you're living almost like you went off to the priesthood. And we saw what happened. I'm a Catholic boy. I know what happened when the choice came between protecting the children or protecting your friend who was the priest. You protected your friend who was the priest. Even though you've sworn an oath to God that you would protect the children, it was to hell with the children. Sorry, child, that we've ruined your life, but the priest will protect him to the end. And they've got that same mentality because of the root, right? It's very hard for you to go and arrest your brother. Very, very difficult. And then you've got that sort of blind loyalty that comes with, I suppose, Manchester United fans, Doesn't matter where you are on the log, we're going to support you. In second division, we'll still support you. That kind of thing. So this allows somebody else to do the work that they'd love to do, which is, let's arrest this guy. Let's fix this up. Let's stop the corruption there. You could almost outsource this to the DA, right? And I think that it could take it a step further, is that the coalition might not just be at the DA, it might be at the multi-party charter. It might be a grand coalition. You might get a speech, another rambling speech, but this time worth listening to, where they say, listen, South Africa is so stuffed, let's fix it up. And we've got 60% of the vote between all of these other parties and the ANC, and we're going to form this grand coalition to rescue South Africa. And here on the stage as the leaders of the IFP, the DA, Action SA, Cyril, etc., you've got all of these one, so that we're all arm in arm and we go for it. The precedent for that, let's remember, was that very brief moment, I think it was 2013, when they did that thing in Zimbabwe. And what happened? The Zimbabwean economy did really well. And within almost no time, Zimbabwe attracted a lot of investment. Everything was going swimmingly within a year or two. And Robert Mugabe sort of said, well, no, can't have this, and killed this brief moment. But it was done in the interests of the country. So I'm saying that to me is not by a long margin, by a short margin, the biggest likelihood. That's what I see, right? I do want to make mention of something that I think is going to happen, and that is provinces are going to become a big, big deal in the future, because at least 3 provinces will not be governed by the ANC. And that starts changing things dramatically. At the moment, there's almost like the weirdest thing that happens within the politics in South Africa, and that is that the ANC treats the DA as if they don't exist. They treat the Western Cape as if it never happened. They almost do everything as if there's only 8 provinces in the country. And it's been quite a good tactic. They've sort of isolated them, keep them out of it. They're not part of the inner circle. But understand that we were all around when 1994 was being negotiated, and there was a big question about federalism. How federal should South Africa be? Should the provinces have more power, less power, etc.? And we went quite a way towards federalism without crossing the Rubicon on that issue. So the provinces actually have quite a lot of power. But we wouldn't know it because most of the provinces have been governed by the ANC. So therefore, even though the provinces could do a whole lot of things, they didn't do it, they just waited for Lutuli House to tell them what to do. But suddenly, and we're seeing it in Gauteng right now, where this poor guy is doing things which I promise you are illegal. You'll end up going to jail for this Panyaza Lesufi, making promises and spending money that he doesn't have, and doing also in a desperate effort to hold on to Gauteng. But the point is that in future, when you've got a very independently minded run Western Cape, you've got a similar thing in Gauteng, you've got a similar thing in KZN, and potentially a similar thing in the Free State. The country starts looking different. You start having provinces that are going to be run different. We all say it whenever we go down to Cape Town. This is like being in a different country. Well, you're in a different province, and the province has a lot of power. You just wouldn't know it if you crossed the border from Gauteng to the northwest because it's just ANC. But what happens when Gauteng is run by a different set of people? And it's going to happen. And now it starts doing things differently. That is going to be a game changer and something that's going to be quite exciting. But in the meantime, those are hardly sort of like, I've come here to give you the insight. I know that something's going to change. If anybody tells you exactly, they're lying. It's impossible to tell. But that's what I see as the most likely outcomes. So, there we go. Hopefully we've got a question or two. We've got some microphones around. Or have I done such a good job that nobody's got any questions? It's got to be someone who disagrees with me. Usually what happens is, I can tell you from the comment section on my show, and that is that the people that leave the most, the longest and angriest comments are usually white men whenever we say something could work out quite well. I get very angry with that, right? So, if there's anybody that has a comment or a question, please, I'm more than happy to answer. See, there we go. Not because you feel sorry for me, I hope.
I want to ask, do you feel in the actual election day that the ballot papers will be too elaborate in order to make it very democratic?
Look, it's going to be a mess, eh? You're going to need, take your glasses with you, please. Because there's going to be literally so many names on it. You're quite right. It's going to be a little bit confusing, right? But we'll wade through it. If there is a question, which is a legit question, is there a potential for electoral fraud? South Africa, oddly enough, has got quite good systems, and it's quite hard to steal an election in South Africa. Very hard. You've got election monitors from all the parties. They count the votes together. You would need to kind of have fraud with your enemies involved, and that doesn't happen often. You live in a modern age where you can take a photo of the tally, so nothing can slip between and the votes are counted at the electoral site, which is quite a big deal. That was one of the problems that they had in America, right, where they shout fraud because you vote and then the boxes disappear and then the result comes out and, then that can raise questions. Here, they are counted on site and you do have observers from all the parties. So, you're dead right, the actual ballot paper is going to be a book, right? And, that is not ideal, but the actual process itself, I've got a great deal of confidence in, because it's kind of difficult to do things. It's not as easy as we may think. Yes, sir. Oh, just wait, there's one behind you. Yep.
Good morning.
Hi.
Thank you for a very interesting talk and your insights. Firstly, do you think Peter Gabriel can sing? My question goes about this. The ANC have put in place a hang-a-lot of legislation which blocks development in the country, starting off the labor laws and subsequently a lot of other stuff. Zuma's legacy of the NSFAS, Ramaphosa's legacy of the NHI. Do you think that they can reverse all that?
Yeah. Look, you've got to start at somewhere, is the bottom line. And I suppose, once again, I don't want to change the question, but the question is, does anybody understand business or the way the world really works? That is the question, right? That real understanding sits in other political parties. Does it sit in the ANC? I'm terrified as to whether there's enough people that understand what needs to be done. It's going to be a hell of a slog. But if you had to take a better government with our current bad laws, we could still work with it, right? So, it's like you're not getting your ideal outcome. Even with this, it's not suddenly going to turn into Switzerland. But at least, and also, what South Africa needs now is a bit of positive momentum. And for positive momentum, what I'm talking about is, remember when you went from the era of Mandela to Mbeki, you kind of had a bit of, the country was waiting to start, and then suddenly with Mbeki coming in and having a few of the right people in place, suddenly the change accelerated. Your first point is to stop the bleeding. That's the first thing that we need to do. So that's what I do think I'm talking about as a positive outcome, is just to stop the bleeding. The laws is going to have to be tackled separately. The buy-in for that will only come from success. So when you see, I was speaking to, I had a wonderful interview with a guy, Sandile Swana. I'm sure anyone who's watched the show will know. I think he's a great analyst. And, we've got to create a problem. And I know it sounds ridiculous where we're sitting on now, and that is in South Africa, talking now economically, we've got to create a labor shortage. And you can do that because it's happened everywhere in the world, where you literally say, we are all going to get so entrepreneurially minded that we're going to run out of workers. It's happened throughout Europe, it's happened in America, it's happened in Asia. It's a decision that you make. So, but first we need people to understand that there's the way out is to grow business, because where else are you going to get tax from? This lady over here wanted to ask a question. There's a mic behind you.
When the ANC lose power, will they relinquish it easily, or there's going to be a fight back from and I'm talking about from the top and also the people on the ground, those who adamantly believe the ANC is the only party.
Yeah.
What kind of backlash would there be on society, unrest, etc.?
I think that you're going to see a similar backlash to what you're seeing. There will be a niggly backlash, and a significant backlash, but it won't be violent or anything. Understand one thing, we've got a few things to be thankful for. We can be thankful that the ANC has declined rather than fallen off a cliff. When, that's what happened in Zim. If you go back to 2000, Mugabe was powerful, then suddenly he lost the election. But he still had control of a very efficient security apparatus. Well, in South Africa, a couple of things that have been different. The decline has been gradual, and the ANC have never been efficient enough to keep a hold on security services at all. We can't even catch crooks. They can't even organize a decent riot or stop it. So there's no way that they can sort of start an insurrection on that point. What you might have a problem with is down at the lower level, They're going to have a mutiny in their party, because just imagine this, is that we're talking numbers here, and we talk about them, when they lose 10% of the vote. So at the moment, let's call their vote 50%. They've got just over 200 members of parliament earning a cost to company of about 2 million rand a year. That person's getting a house here, a house there, cars, etc., etc. Now suddenly you're going to go there and let's just say they get 40%. They have to get rid of sort of 60 MPs. That's 60 people who are unemployable. And what are they going to do? So what they end up doing is they go to another party, or they try and do this, they try and do that. There's that niggly fight back. It will happen, but I don't think it'll be significant, because I think the country is tired of them. I don't think there's one community that you would have had, maybe, if you think back to when Zuma came on the scene, there were still communities that were prepared to fight him. People were prepared to, what did Julius say? I'll die for Zuma, I'll kill for Zuma. Who's going to die or kill for Ramaphosa? I can't see that person. So I'm not that concerned, only because they've run out of energy. So this has happened, if you zoom out, this has happened about as well as we could have hoped for. This decline and then fall. Right in front here, and yeah.
The ANC.
Yeah, fine.
Do you think the ANC will survive financially? I mean, they're already bankrupt. So
Oh dear, we've got to stop at some point. You're standing here next to me. What do you think we're going to get? I think that they have, and this is a whole different topic. But I think that they've done a terrible deal. That's very dangerous, and that I think that they have their. If you look at it, and I've said this on my show, their sudden improvement in their financial situation came from the moment the ANC started to support Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and now Russia's support of Iran in Israel, and suddenly they can pay their 100 and something million rand debt and pay all staff salaries, and there's no issues. Right? Where would they have got that money? They're not getting more funders than before. They're getting fewer funders from before. That money could only come from that source. And it's one of those circumstantial things that is so apparent, right? That do you need the smoking gun is what I'm saying. So will they survive financially? Only if they're in government. And look, if they lose, let's just say somehow they lose and somebody else, the multi-party charter, gets the vote, the ANC will disappear. They won't even sort of become an opposition party that will regroup. They will disappear. The brand will go. And there's great, in India, the BJP, their party of liberation, held on for 70 years. And now I think they got 12% in the last election. You'll see a version of that. So they will only survive if they're in charge. This lady right in front here.
I hope I'm going to say correctly. What do you make of Russia's flirtation with the ANC? That comes from Sicily.
Look, I think that there's a whole other discussion here around the global picture. We are flirting with the dark side. There's no doubt about it. And the world has got a problem. The world has got a fight to fight right now. The question is, what is going to prevail? The China, Russia, Iran axis, which includes South Africa, or the rest of the world? Just quickly on that is that I think that by taking on the West, they've re-energized the West. That didn't look possible 2 years ago. It didn't look possible that suddenly you'd actually be prepared to go into armed conflict in Ukraine. It just looked like the West had gone beyond that. They wouldn't ever get themselves dirty. So, and obviously I'm nail my colors to the mast on which side I'm on. I don't see that as the progressive side. I don't think anything is progressive when you don't have your say in how the place is run, right? So, South Africa, all of those other countries, none of them are democracies. So we're trying to do something which is impossible, be a democracy that supports autocracies. How's that ever going to work? I don't see it working. So I think they're doing it just purely for the money at the moment. So thank you. Is there? You got the joy of the last question.
a simple bread and butter issue. When all these ANC people are out, are we still going to be paying pensions and wives' pensions? And what happens to the MPs?
The MPs do get paid. Well, I mean, they do, like any job. They've got, like any sort of corporate employment, you get this very generous pension that's linked to your time of service and your position that you held, and there's certain perks and that's baked in. But it would be cheap at the price to just get rid of them because they're pretty useless. Yeah, but it will cost us some money, but at least hopefully we can do something else. So thank you all for listening today, and thanks for the invitation. Oh, thank you.
And I will let you know what happens.
Thank you.